Usually when we sit down to do a deep dive, we are looking at history.
Right.
We are looking at things that are settled, printed in textbooks, or at least cold cases that have been just ice cold for decades.
Right.
But today,
Today is very different.
yeah, today feels active.
It feels incredibly active. And honestly, it is a little unsettling to even have these files in front of us.
We are looking at a stack of documents on the table right now that I swear it feels like it's vibrating. It's titled The Zodiac Legacy, The Dev Inheritance.
And just reading through this material, I had to keep reminding myself that this isn't a movie script.
Right.
This isn't some elaborate what-if scenario. This is a collection of files that literally bridges a gap of over 50 years.
It is a collision, really.
Yeah.
A violent collision between the most infamous unsolved mystery of the 20th century, the Zodiac Killer, and the hyper-modern forensic reality of the year 2026.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about the old Zodiac ciphers from 1969 anymore. We are talking about a highly specific modern-day investigation involving a detective named Jev. And this isn't just about him catching a killer. The documents we have here.
Yeah, I'll light them.
We do. We have police reports, decoded ciphers, private journals, and a completely mind-blowing transcript of a final confrontation. And they tell a story that is just so much more personal than a standard true crime case.
It shifts the genre entirely. It starts out as a police procedural, like a standard cold case review, and it ends up as a psychological horror story.
It forces you to ask, what happens when you stare into the abyss and the abyss stares back with your own eyes?
Ooh, that is exactly what this feels like. So here's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to parse through 5 specific documents from this stack. We've got the old police files, sure, but we also have forensic logs involving 2026 technology.
We're talking NASA satellite data.
Yes, and advanced AI handwriting analysis and a DNA test that, well, it changes absolutely everything.
It redefines the word inheritance. Usually when we talk about inheritance, we think of assets.
Money, property.
Exactly. Maybe a house. We rarely think about the inheritance of a burden or the inheritance of a terrible generational sin.
We really don't. So if you are listening to this, buckle up. If you thought you knew the Zodiac case, you do not know this part of it. This is the part where the past just flat out refuses to stay buried.
Shall we start at the beginning?
Let's do it.
Or rather, I should say the pre-beginning.
Right. Document 1, the Riverside file. Now, for those of you who follow true crime, Riverside is one of those heavily debated topics. Was it the Zodiac? Was it a copycat? Was it completely unrelated?
Because it happened years before the canonical Bay Area murders.
Exactly. But in these documents we have right here, the connection seems strikingly confirmed. We are looking at official police report, case number 665829.
The date is October 30th, 1966. The location is the Riverside City College Library. And the victim was Cherry Jo Bates.
And reading the official police report included in this stack, there is one highly specific detail that just makes my skin crawl. It isn't the violence itself, although obviously that was brutal.
It's the car.
It's the car, the distributor wire.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because for anyone who doesn't know about 1960s car engines, or just cars in general, this might just sound like a random mechanical failure.
It wasn't a failure.
No.
The distributor is essentially the heart of the ignition system in those older vehicles. It literally distributes the high voltage from the ignition coil to the correct cylinder.
Right, so if you pull the middle wire, the coil wire, the car is completely dead.
It will crank. The battery works, the starter motor turns, but the engine will never, ever start.
So picture this. Cherry Jo Bates is in the library studying. It's nighttime. She comes out to her car. She gets in. She puts the key in the ignition and nothing. Just the sound of the starter motor grinding and grinding.
And this is so incredibly crucial for the psychological profile we're building here.
Yeah.
This was not a crime of opportunity, not in the sense of someone just walking by, seeing a vulnerable person alone in a dark parking lot and acting on a sudden dark impulse.
No, this was engineered.
Completely engineered. The killer deliberately disabled the car, creating a trap. He created a mechanical problem so that he could be the one to offer the solution.
Need a lift.
Exactly. Need some help with your engine? It implies a level of patience and premeditation that is just terrifying. He was watching her.
He had to be.
He was waiting in the shadows for her to come out, turn that key, and feel that rising panic of the engine not turning over. He wanted her stranded. He wanted her to feel helpless so he could step into the scene as the Good Samaritan.
It totally changes the crime from a random attack into a staged performance. He set the stage, he managed the props, and he waited for his cue.
And that performative aspect carries right over into the written evidence associated with this Riverside case?
Yes, the documents include the full text of a confession letter that was sent to the local paper after the murder. And the text it's visceral.
Read that quote we highlighted.
Quote, "She was young and beautiful, but now she's battered and dead," unquote.
The tone there is incredibly possessive and totally dehumanizing. He isn't just admitting to a crime. He isn't just saying, I did this. He is actively bragging about the physical transformation of a human being.
He took something beautiful and made it battered.
It's entirely about power.
Yeah.
Total, absolute control over the victim's physical state of being. He wants the reader of that letter to know that he is the one who decides who lives and who dies and exactly in what condition they remain.
And then, as if that isn't enough, there's the poem.
The desktop poem.
Right? Found on a wooden desk in the library's storage area, written out on the underside.
The source material we have highlights a very specific, fascinating word used in the modern analysis of this poem, the word darknack.
Zodiac.
It's a word meaning deeply painful or sorrowful. And the poem itself is signed with a very distinct letter.
A Z.
A Z.
In 1966, which is years before the Zodiac officially terrorized the Bay Area and gave himself that name.
This is why Riverside is often considered the origin story. It's the rough draft of the persona.
But for decades, skeptics have pushed back on this. They've said, well, a handwriting analysis is inherently subjective. Maybe it was just a moody, morbid college student who happened to like the letter Z.
Right. Human experts disagree all the time. But here is where our documents take a massive turn into the present day. We have case notes here from Detective Dev, dated the year 2026.
And this is where it gets so cool and frankly a little dystopian. Dev isn't just sitting there looking at the poem with a magnifying glass like a detective from the 70s.
He's using Notebook LM.
He's utilizing modern, highly advanced AI to analyze the handwriting patterns. And we need to be really clear with you about what this actually means.
This isn't just basic optical character recognition.
No, it's not OCR where the computer just reads the text and turns it into a Word document.
He isn't asking the computer, what does this say? He's asking the computer who wrote this.
Exactly. Because human handwriting experts have argued about these specific letters for decades. They look at the shape of the letters, what they call the form. They say things like, oh, the slant is different here, or the loop on the Y is too wide compared to his later letters.
But that's so subjective and easily manipulated. Dev is using a 2026 algorithm that goes way deeper. It analyzes motor control pathology.
Motor control pathology. Okay, break that down. What does that mean in plain English for us?
Think of it this way. When you write something down on a piece of paper, your hand makes thousands of microscopic movements. Tremors, pressure shifts against the paper, velocity changes as you speed up or slow down on a curve.
Right.
Those micro movements are completely unique to your specific neuromuscular system. It's literally like a fingerprint of your nervous system.
So you can consciously fake a slant.
Yes. You can deliberately fake being messy or try to write really neatly. You can even try to write with your non-dominant hand.
But you cannot fake the microtremors of your own biology.
Precisely. The AI is looking at the invisible skeleton of the physical movement, not just the ink left on the page. It actually reconstructs the precise motion of the pen in 3D space.
That is wild.
So Dev takes the Riverside desktop poem from 1966, feeds it into the system, and compares it with the Paul Stein letter from 1969. That's the one the killer sent with a bloody piece of the taxi driver's shirt.
The objective is simple. Is it a match? Or is the Riverside poem just a really early copycat?
And while the document doesn't explicitly give us the raw percentage output from the AI, Dev's reaction in his private notes implies a definitive, undeniable link.
He's treating it as an absolute fact that it's the same author.
The notes suggest the AI found a specific degradation in the motor control. The writing in 1969 showed the exact same neurological fingerprint as the writing in 1966, but with clear signs of progression over those 3 years.
Progression. Like a neurodegenerative disease.
Could be a disease. Or it could just be extreme psychological stress or natural aging. But the underlying source code of the physical movement was identical. Dev is validating, using 2026 tech, that the monster who terrorized San Francisco started his career in that library in Riverside.
It totally solidifies the timeline. It means the Zodiac wasn't just a flash in the pan who popped up out of nowhere in 68 and 69.
He was evolving.
He was evolving. And thanks to Dev's modern tools, we can see that evolution clearly. It bridges the gap between the amateur murder in Riverside and the highly professional terror campaign in the Bay Area.
And that dark evolution brings us directly to the escalation of his crimes.
Right. Moving on to document 2 in the stack, the Blue Rock Springs log. Now we are deep in the heat of it. The date is July 4th, 1969.
The victims were Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau. It was a horrific, sudden attack in a dark parking lot. A 9mm Luger was the weapon used.
This is the attack that really put the Zodiac on the map for the public. It was Independence Day. There were literal fireworks going off in the distance. And in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park, just absolute bloody chaos.
But again, when you dig into this file, what stands out isn't just the ballistics or the crime scene photos.
No.
It's the killer's behavior after the crime.
The phone call.
The phone call. This becomes his signature behavior. 40 minutes after the shooting, the local police station gets a call.
I really want you to think about that timeline. 40 minutes. He didn't flee the state in a panic. He didn't go into hiding in the woods. He drove away, waited, and found a public payphone nearby.
And the voice on the recording, the police report, describes it as spoken very slowly and with a cold mind.
A cold mind. Thande Damag.
Right. And the caller says, quote, "I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye."
Let's pause on that specific phrasing. I also killed those kids last year.
He is referring to the Lake Herman Road murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. Until this exact phone call, the police had absolutely no idea those two separate crimes were connected.
So he is literally doing their job for them.
In a twisted way, yes. But you have to ask why. Why connect the dots for the Cox? Why not just get away with a double murder?
Because he desperately wants the credit.
Exactly. For this specific killer, the physical act of murder isn't enough to satisfy him. The real satisfaction comes from the public recognition.
He needs the brand.
He needs the brand. If the police think these are just random, unrelated incidents like a mugging gone wrong over here or a lover's quarrel over there, he fails in his own mind. He needs to be known as the grand architect of all of it.
He cannot sit still until he sees his work acknowledged under a single, terrifying banner.
It's narcissism in its absolute purest, deadliest form. He's essentially building a portfolio of death.
He really is. But speaking of seeing things, this is where document 2 drops a historical bombshell that I honestly did not see coming at all when I first read it.
Oh, you mean the NASA discovery?
The NASA discovery. This is just wild. So the source material mentions a realistic twist for Notebook LM. Dev, in his 2026 investigation, manages to recover classified data from 1969.
Specifically, he recovers satellite data. Now, we have to pause here because I can practically hear you rolling your eyes. You're thinking, satellites? In 1969, we have to remember the historical context of that year.
It was the absolute height of the Cold War.
The space race. The U.S. government had the Corona program running. These were highly classified spy satellites, specifically the Keyhole or KH-4B systems.
And these weren't like the modern GPS satellites that beam digital JPEGs down to your iPhone.
Not at all. These were basically massive, sophisticated cameras floating in orbit.
They use actual physical film, right?
Yes. Massive rolls of physical film. When the film ran out, the satellite would literally eject a canister into space. It would fall through the Earth's atmosphere, deploy a parachute, and a military plane, usually a C-119, would have to fly by and snag the canister out of midair before it sank into the ocean.
That sounds completely insane, like a James Bond movie.
It was incredibly dangerous and complex, but because it was physical chemical film, the image resolution was actually incredibly high. Way better than early digital cameras decades later.
But the images were super grainy, and more importantly, they were classified top secret for decades. Nobody investigating a local murder in Vallejo would ever have access to them.
Exactly. But jump to 2026. Deb accesses the declassified raw scans of those old film negatives, and he applies modern generative AI to denoise the image.
Which is tricky, right? Because you don't want the AI to invent things.
Right. He has to be incredibly careful not to let the AI hallucinate details that aren't actually there. But the technology in 2026 allows for photon-level reconstruction.
Oh, wow.
So he directs the AI to look at the exact coordinates of the Blue Rock Springs area on the specific night of the murder.
And he finds a car.
A car that was never, ever in the official police records.
A car that the eyewitnesses missed. Or just didn't mention.
or a car that was parked just strategically out of sight. The data clearly reveals a vehicle parked about 300 yards off the main road, completely hidden under a dense cluster of oak trees.
I want you to think about the massive implications of that for a second. For over 50 years, we have relied entirely on flawed eyewitness testimony, on blurry tire tracks found the next morning in the dirt.
Yeah.
But here, we have a ghostly image taken from outer space, captured in 1969, chemically burned onto film, and processed in 2026, revealing a vehicle that investigators at the time literally could not have known about.
It creates an entirely new timeline for the night of the 4th of July. It strongly suggests that maybe the killer didn't just drive up, shoot, and immediately drive away.
Right.
Maybe he was waiting there for hours. Maybe he had a secondary getaway vehicle stashed.
It opens up a whole new avenue of suspects that were probably cleared back in the 70s because they didn't match the specific car description given by the survivors.
It really emphasizes how much technology fundamentally changes the truth. The truth of that night was always there, sitting in a NASA basement in a metal canister, but humanity didn't have the eyes to see it until Dev came along.
It is forensic archaeology. He is literally digging up the past, not with a shovel, but with an algorithm.
That's so true.
Okay, let's move from the physical, spatial evidence to the actual mind of the killer. Document 3, the infamous 340 cipher.
The 340?
We have the full decoded text right here in the source material. And I have to say, even though I've seen this text before on documentaries and forums, reading it in this specific context, knowing what we know about Dev, it just hits different.
Read it out loud. Let's hear his actual voice.
Okay. It says, quote, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me."
Just chilling. Even 50 years later, it is so arrogant.
It continues, "Where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise death." Unquote.
There is so much to unpack in the twisted philosophy he's presenting here.
He talked about slaves. He talks extensively about the afterlife. It sounds like a deranged cult of one.
He is desperately trying to rationalize his own violence. He's created a bizarre theology where he is the ultimate winner. He believes that his victims are basically being collected.
But
It's a psychological mechanism to avoid guilt, or rather to transform the concept of guilt into dark productivity. In his mind, he's saying, I'm not just murdering innocent people, I'm actively staffing my afterlife.
which is deeply delusional, obviously. But there is a very specific detail in this text that the documents focus on heavily. The word paradise.
Paradice.
He spells it that way every single time. Why? Is he just really bad at spelling?
That has been the million-dollar question for profilers. For a long time, early psychologists thought it indicated a significant lack of formal education.
But the Zodiac quoted the Mikhailo in other letters. He built incredibly complex mathematical ciphers. The guy wasn't stupid.
No, he wasn't. So, as the expert analysis in our source material suggests, we have to ask, is it a code?
A location code, or a trigger word of some kind.
If paradise isn't just a misspelling of paradise, but a proper noun, a specific place, or an acronym, then this entire cipher isn't just a crazy theological rant.
It's a map.
It's a map. Remember, the Zodiac sent other ciphers to the papers, like the map cipher that included the Mount Diablo reference.
Right, with the crosshairs over the mountain.
He talked about radians and inches along the magnetic north. He was deeply obsessed with geometry, geography, and physical location.
So paradise with a C might actually be the key to unlocking a physical location.
Exactly. And considering what happens later in these documents, that theory holds a massive amount of water. It's not just bad spelling, it's a deliberate breadcrumb.
He's hiding the truth in plain sight, protected by a simple misspelling that makes the police and the public think he's just uneducated.
He wants to be understood, but only by the right person.
He wants a worthy adversary.
Exactly. Someone who is smart enough to look past the surface-level error to find the deeper, hidden meaning.
Paradise. Man, it sticks in your head once you see it that way. Okay, now we really have to turn the corner. We are leaving the 1960s behind and landing firmly in the year 2026. Document 4.
The 2026 discovery. This is the absolute turning point of the entire narrative.
This is where the tense music would stop in the movie. We're looking at Detective Dev's private journal. He is in San Francisco. He has managed to get access to a secure, deep storage, old evidence locker. And he pulls out the hood.
The executioner's hood worn during the attack at Lake Berryessa.
Just picturing that physical object in a sterile modern room, its
Yeah.
black square top with that terrifying white cross-circle zodiac symbol stitched right onto the chest. It's literally the stuff of nightmares.
It is arguably the most terrifying visual artifact of the entire Zodiac saga. Because unlike the other crimes, which were quick, blitz-style attacks in the dark, Berryessa was a daytime performance. He wore a full costume.
He wore a costume. And for decades, that costume has just been sitting in a box, just old cloth and thread in the dark.
But Dev re-examines it under modern lab conditions. And he finds something
He finds a single human hair.
trapped inside the hood, specifically caught deep inside the stitching of the inner seam.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Right.
1969 forensics would never, ever have found that.
No way.
They didn't have the digital magnification tools, and even if they did happen to spot it, hair analysis back then was basically just looking at it under a microscope to see if the color and thickness kind of matched a suspect.
Right, they couldn't extract DNA from a rootless hair shaft back then.
But Div does. He has 2026 technology. He has advanced PCR amplification. He has next-gen sequencing. So he manages to extract a viable DNA profile from that microscopic sample.
And he immediately runs it against the massive criminal databases. Cody's, commercial ancestry sites, genealogy logs, everything available in 2026.
And he gets a 0% match,
Nothing.
which is incredibly significant in itself. Yeah, it means the Zodiac was never in the system.
Exactly. He was never caught for anything else. No DUIs, no petty theft, nothing that would put his blood or saliva in a police database. He lived a life completely off the radar of modern law enforcement.
Of course, Dev doesn't stop there. He does something highly unusual and honestly pretty risky for his own mental health. He runs the Zodiac sample against his own police exclusion file.
Right. Police officers and crime scene techs often have their DNA on file simply to rule out accidental contamination at crime scenes.
And this is the moment. The source document says the machine finishes processing, and the Zodiac's DNA matches Detective Dev's own DNA by exactly 45%.
45%.
Okay, I really need you to break down the biology map for me here. 45% isn't 100%. It's not a clone. What does that number actually mean biologically?
This is where the science gets undeniable. Every human shares roughly 50% of their autosomal DNA with the biological parent. You share about 25% with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. You share about 12.5% with a first cousin.
So 45% is...
45% is a parent.
Wow.
The reason it isn't exactly 50% is very likely due to sample degradation. The DNA on that hood is over 50 years old. It's been sitting in a non-climate-controlled evidence locker. It's fragmented.
But statistically speaking...
Statistically, a 45% match on a degraded sample that old hits the bell curve for a first-degree biological relative perfectly.
That's a father.
That is his father.
I cannot even begin to imagine what that specific moment felt like for Dev in that lab. Think about it. You are hunting a monster. You spent your entire career, your entire adult life, obsessively chasing this shadow in the dark.
Yeah.
And then the sterile machine spits out a number on a screen, and you realize the monster you are hunting is your own dad.
It completely shatters and reframes his entire identity. It reframes his lifelong obsession.
Was it even a choice?
Right. Was he drawn to this cold case because he's just a really good, dedicated detective? Or was he drawn to it by some unseen biological...
Some kind of epigenetic memory.
The Dev inheritance.
Exactly. That's the title of the file. It's not money. It's not a trust fund. It's this incredibly dark genetic legacy. The source material specifically notes that Dev realizes the killer he is hunting is his biological father, and the narrative shifts instantly.
It is no longer law versus chaos. It's no longer cop versus killer.
It's son versus father.
And honestly, it perfectly explains the long silence. You know, people always ask, why did the Zodiac stop? Or why did he seem to stop communicating and killing? Why did he just disappear into the ether?
Maybe he had a family.
Maybe he had Dev.
It adds this suffocating layer of personal horror that is just hard to shake off. Every time Dev looks in the mirror to shave, does he see the Zodiac looking back at him?
Does he recognize the shape of his own eyes, the way his hands move, the motor control pathology we talked about earlier?
Ugh, that is a heavy, heavy thought. It turns the hunter into the hunted in a psychological way. He's hunting himself.
But the story doesn't end in the sterile lab. It ends out in the field.
Yes, it does. Let's move to document 5, the final confrontation.
This is the climax of the documents. Dev takes everything he knows, and he traces a specific physical address.
Using the old map cipher and that working theory about the paradise misspelling. See, we told you those old codes were going to be important.
It leads him out of the city directly to Mount Diablo, California.
Which, by the way, was always a massively rumored hotspot for Zodiac activity among amateur sleuths.
It was heavily featured. He explicitly mentioned it in his taunting letters. He threatened to blow up a school bus full of children with a bomb that was supposedly set to go off based on geometric coordinates drawn from the peak of Mount Diablo.
Because it's the ultimate vantage point. You can see the entire Bay Area from up there.
So Dev drives to Mount Diablo. Describe this setting for us. It's 2026. What exactly is he walking into?
Well, imagine the drive up that mountain. It's winding, steep, dangerous roads. The vegetation is dry brush. It's incredibly isolated. And the whole time, he knows who he is going to meet, or at least he knows he is driving toward the origin of his own biology.
The anxiety in that car must be absolutely paralyzing.
He finally reaches the exact coordinates, and it's not a normal house. It's this old, rotting cabin, maybe an old surveyor's shack or a ranger station, completely hidden deep in the brush off the trail.
And he goes inside, and there is no killer waiting for him with a gun drawn.
No.
There's no creepy old man sitting in a rocking chair by a fire.
No, it's empty. Except there's a table. And on the table, sitting right in the center, is a tape.
An audio tape, labeled very clearly with his name.
Dev.
Which has massive implications. It implies the Zodiac knew.
He always knew.
He knew his son would eventually come up that mountain. He knew specifically that Dev, his own blood, would be the one to finally solve the 340 cipher and the map.
That suggests he was actively watching Dev growing up from a distance. Or worse, he somehow engineered Dev's entire life and career path to lead directly to this exact moment in that cabin.
We have the actual transcript of the tape here in the source.
I'm going to read this because this is the voice of the Zodiac, recorded who knows when, speaking directly to his adult son in the year 2026. Quote, "Hello, Dev. If you are hearing this, the year is 2026. I knew you would be the one to find the 340 solution."
Talk about absolute confidence or just staggering arrogance. He's literally predicting the future from the past.
And then he drops the ultimate bombshell about his motive. Listen to this. Quote, "I didn't kill for slaves in paradise. I killed to create a legacy that only my bloodline could stop. You are the final cipher, Dev. Solve yourself." Unquote.
That changes absolutely everything we thought we knew about the Zodiac psychology.
Right, the whole slaves in paradise thing. The entire theological framework we just spent time analyzing.
A total lie.
A distraction.
According to this tape, yes. The slave's motive was nothing but a red herring designed to terrify the general public. It was pure theater. The true motive, the actual engine behind the murders, was this insane, multi-generational game.
He wasn't just killing random people in lovers' lanes. He was painstakingly setting up an unsolvable puzzle that was designed to take decades to crack.
A puzzle that specifically required his own biological offspring to complete.
Quote, "Create a legacy that only my bloodline could stop." It's so incredibly narcissistic. He honestly thought of himself as so brilliant, so complex, that no ordinary police officer or FBI agent could ever catch him.
It had to be someone made of his own genetic material.
It's a completely twisted form of love, almost.
Or at least a twisted form of royal succession. He is literally handing the bloody baton to Dev. He's saying, I started this dark thing. You finish it. You are the final cipher.
Solve yourself. That specific line gives me actual chills. What does that even mean in a practical sense? Solve yourself.
I think it means that Dev himself is the ultimate answer to the riddle. The Zodiac's true identity, his deepest motivation, his ending, it's all locked up inside Dev's existence.
Right.
By finding the truth, Dev isn't just closing a dusty case file for the precinct. He is confronting his own traumatic origin story. He has to understand why he exists in the first place.
And the awful answer is, he exists simply to be the period at the end of the Zodiac sentence.
And just to make sure there is absolutely no doubt left in Dev's mind, the cabin delivers one final visual gut punch.
The photograph.
Yes, Dev looks up and sees a physical picture tacked to the cabin wall.
It's his mother.
But you have to look at the timestamp context provided in the source file.
The photo was taken one day before the first murder in Riverside, one day before Cherie Jo Bates was killed and her distributor wire was pulled.
This connects the historical dots in just a devastating way. It strongly suggests that the violence began because of the relationship with the mother, or at least in tandem with it.
The timeline of the most famous serial killing spree in American history is intimately, directly tied to the timeline of Dev's existence, his conception, his mother.
It takes the massive global terror of the Zodiac, the myth that haunted a nation, and it makes it domestic.
It makes it small and intimate and just horrifying. It wasn't about the stars or astrology or slaves in the afterlife. It was about this one broken family.
And that is the ultimate tragedy of it all. All those innocent people who died, Bates, Farron, Shepard, Stein, they all died as part of this incredibly twisted inheritance scheme for a child who either hadn't even been born yet or was just an infant.
So we step back from the documents. We look at this whole Dev inheritance as a complete picture. We've gone from a cut distributor wire in a dark library parking lot in 1966 all the way to a high-tech DNA test in a sterile lab in 2026.
It's a narrative arc that spans exactly 60 years of human history and technological progress.
And it perfectly contrasts the massive public terror, the ciphers printed on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle, the threats to the school buses, the panic with this incredibly quiet, private reality.
A father simply leaving a breadcrumb trail for his son to follow.
It completely redefines what legacy means.
Yeah.
Usually an inheritance is a gift. Here, the inheritance is a heavy, inescapable burden.
It is the burden of truth, the burden of bad blood.
And the burden of knowing. Because Dev knows now. He knows exactly who his father was. He knows he shares 45% of that terrible DNA.
And he knows his own existence was the literal catalyst for a serial killer's entire reign of terror.
And he knows that he, Dev, was the intended audience all along.
That's the part that really sticks with me long after reading this. The Zodiac wasn't writing those taunting letters to the police chief. I mean, physically he was, but that wasn't the real letter.
The real letter was the existence of Dev. The ciphers were just patiently waiting for Dev to grow up, become a detective, and learn how to read them.
It raises a very, very difficult philosophical question for you, the listener, and obviously for Dev.
Yeah. And this is the exact thought we want to leave you with today as we wrap up this deep dive.
The tape in the cabin clearly said, solve yourself. The Zodiac's ultimate overarching goal was to create a worthy successor who could solve him.
So the question is, by using all this modern tech, by finally solving the unsolvable case, did Dev actually win?
Or did he just do exactly what the Zodiac wanted him to do all along?
If the killer specifically designed the terrible game for you to finish, does finishing it mean you defeated him? Or does it mean you flawlessly completed his design?
Did you catch the killer, or did you just become the final necessary piece of his dark art?
That is such a haunting thought to end on. Dev finally has all the answers, but honestly, I do not know if he has any peace.
I highly doubt it. Knowing the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just traps you in the room with the monster.
This has been a deep dive into the Zodiac legacy. Thank you so much for listening.
And keep questioning the patterns.
We will see you next time.